Okay, there are some basic terms and notations that make communicating about geometry much easier. So we're going to go ahead and define those and learn that notation. The first word, actually everything on this first page I think you may have heard before. A line is a set of points that continues in two opposite directions infinitely. So, for example, something like this, and it's going to have arrows on the ends. It goes on and on and on and on. Now, what's really important is understanding the notation means how do I name it? How do I communicate about this line? Well, lines sometimes have like a cursive letter next to it, and you might call it line L. But more often, it is common that you would have a couple points on there. Let me throw a third one on there. Let's say points A, B, and C. Okay, to name a line, you only need 2 points. 2 points define a line, so you only need 2 points to name this line. The order that you put those 2 points in does not at all matter because it goes on and on and on in both directions. So it's not like it starts and stops somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple examples. One would be line AB. Now the nice part about the notation is if you understand what a line is, that's the symbol you use in the notation. So we could call this line AB. Now again, order didn't matter, so we could call it line BA. And it's the exact same line. And in fact, we don't even have to use those 2 letters. We could have used CA, line CA, or BC, okay, and so forth. Any of these would work. They all name the same line. Okay, array. Array is a set of points that has one endpoint. Okay, so there's one side is going to be a point, and it continues in the other direction infinitely, meaning it goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay, now again, notice there's only one arrow because it has what's called an endpoint, meaning that it starts here, stops here. Sometimes people argue over what that means. It's called an initial point sometimes in array because it's more where it starts, but we can call it endpoint as well. Alright, when you're naming array, it is a little bit more specific. You have to be careful. So let's pick a couple letters here, K, P, L, for example. Okay, so if I want to name this array, what's important about array is that I must list the endpoint first. So I'm going to start with L, and then the other one, it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to use the symbol of array, always pointing to the right, even though my picture may go to the left. So it doesn't matter. I could call this line array LP, or I could call it array LK. But what matters is that my arrow goes to the right and my endpoint is first. Okay, let's look at a segment. A segment has 2 endpoints, so it doesn't continue. It starts and it stops. There are no arrows at all. When you're naming a segment, when you name a segment, it doesn't matter the order, but what does matter is that these are the only 2 letters you can use. Alright, if there's another point somewhere in between and use that letter, you're naming only that part of the segment. So when you name a segment, you're going to use the endpoints and you're going to use a segment. Again, the notation here, the symbol is what you are naming, so that makes it kind of easy. So we could name it segment BT or segment TB. Okay, those are naming the exact same segment. Okay, a plane. A plane is actually shifting now into 2 dimensions. It's a flat surface. So, for example, this paper would be considered a plane. Technically, it's going on and on forever. Okay, but this is a part of a plane. My table is a part of a plane. The floor is a part of a plane, a bigger plane. So when you're drawing it, you often draw it as a parallelogram. That's how it's drawn. Sometimes you might see someone using arrows like this to show that it's going on and all those directions forever. To name a plane, sometimes there's a capital letter over here, so like H, I could say this is plane H. Or what's more likely is that you will have different points on here. Now you need at least 3 points, and they cannot be in a straight line. I'm just going to put 4 in here so you can see there's different ways to name this. R, W, S. I'm trying to use letters I haven't used before. X. Okay. So any 3 of these, it takes 3 points. They cannot be in the same line, because if they're in the same line, then you're only naming a one-dimensional line here. You're not naming a plane. So 3 points that are, we're going to learn later a word collinear, they have to be non-collinear. So, and the order again, it's not going to matter. So there's no symbol. You write the word plane and then you list the letters. And again, it can be any 3 of the letters in any order. So it could be plane, X, W, R. It does not matter the order, and it doesn't matter which 3 letters as long as they are not in a line. It could be plane, S, X, W. Okay, those are all naming the same plane, and there's many, many more ways you could name that plane. Okay, an angle. An angle is formed by 2 rays. So remember, a ray has an endpoint and goes on in one direction forever. So an angle is formed by 2 rays that intersect at the endpoints. And that intersection is called a vertex. Intersect means to touch. So for example, let's say I have a ray here and a second ray here. Okay. Alright, so the 2 rays are intersecting here at the vertex. Their endpoints are intersecting, and we call that the vertex. Alright, now naming angles is also a little bit tricky. It's easy once you get it, but it's very specific. You have to be specific when you name an angle. So one way to name it is if you have an angle that is all by itself, like this one. Let's say the vertex here is letter V. One way to name this is we're going to use the angle symbol, but this time instead of on top, it goes in front, and you can say angle V. Alright? Now sometimes you have more than one angle here. You'll see some examples in the practice. But, if you have more than one angle here, you have to use 3 letters. But even if there's only one angle, you can still use 3 letters. So let's say E and M. Okay, so if I have 3 letters, if I'm using 3 letters to name an angle, I have to trace it in the order that I would draw the angle. So for example, I'm going to start here. So it would be angle E, V, M. So it's like, how would I draw that? Angle E, V, M. Okay? Now it doesn't matter the direction you went in. You could have started down here at the bottom one, angle M, V, E. You could have gone in that direction. M, V, E. Okay? So all 3 of these are different ways to name the same angle. What I do want to point out before I stop here is that notice that my vertex V is in the middle. If V is not in the middle, you have not named this angle right here. Okay,